And now, from the Live 95 studios in Florence, this is Good Morning PD with Ken Arp and Dave Baker on Live 95.
McCall Farms is our sponsor every Wednesday morning. We certainly appreciate their support of Good Morning PD Live 95. They've been with us since about the get-go, Royal Rev of radio. And if we catch anybody buying anything in a can that didn't come from McCall Farms, we'll find somebody. I would say we'll send the linebackers in South Carolina to get you, but that wouldn't scare anybody. Let me be nice.
Ouch.
Let me be nice. They're young. Wait till year after next. Let's talk a little bit about, let's establish.
Rough this morning.
We've established that we've got a ill-informed electorate. Agree or disagree?
I would agree.
By and large, I mean, the majority of people who go to the polls on whatever Tuesday to vote, they don't really know what they're voting on. There's only probably 25% who have a vast understanding of what they're doing at the poll. And I'm not advocating voter suppression. Please don't misunderstand that. I would love to encourage the voter to become better informed. I think that would make for better government, a better country. But I'm certainly not advocating that, because you don't know what you're doing, you're not allowed to vote. The Constitution affords you the right to vote. You have a right to vote. You have a right to not know a damn thing and go vote. I mean, in essence, that's what we're doing. Most of us go to the poll. We don't know a damn thing, but we still vote. You have that right. I think there's a responsibility that comes along as an American voter in at least understanding in some elementary way what it is you're voting on. But that's not what it says in the Constitution. So let's go. We've established that we've got a debt problem. I think we've established we got a bunch of voters going to the poll to vote for a bunch of politicians who really don't know what they're voting on and what the consequences of their vote are. Okay, well, to service the debt, it takes tax dollars. Let's do this. I went back last night and looked because I quoted some real broad-based numbers yesterday in who pays the taxes. I want to go back and revisit this because I don't think the way I did it was fair and representative exactly where the money comes from. I've taken the estate tax, the excise tax, the corporate income tax, the payroll tax, the individual income tax. I've taken all of those and put them together. And one of the biggest misconceptions about the U.S. tax code is, and you hear it all the time, especially Republicans, a large portion of Americans do not pay federal taxes. Well, it is true that the bottom 40% of income earners pay no individual income tax. That is true. The bottom 40% of income earners pay no individual income tax. They do, however, pay payroll taxes if they're working. In fact, about 80% of American taxpayers pay more in payroll taxes than in individual income tax. What are payroll taxes? Well, they come out of your paycheck. They help finance Social Security, Medicare, unemployment benefits. They're the second largest source of federal revenue. In fact, Reb, they make up about 1/3 of all total receipts annually, every year. I mean, payroll taxes are a big chunk of the money that our federal government takes in. So when you look at estate tax, excise tax, corporate income tax, payroll tax, what we just talked about, individual income tax, the lowest quintile, the lowest 20% of income earners in America pay 3.9% of all the tax collected. 20%, that's the ones not making a lot of money. 3.9%. The second quintile, 8.4% of all federal taxes collected are collected from that second quintile. The third quintile, which is what we call the middle quintile, 13.5% of all receipts collected come from that middle quintile. The fourth quintile, 17.2%. The top quintile, 24.9%, roughly 25%. So you see, we do have a progressive tax system in America. The more you make, the more you pay. Top 1%. Listen to this. When you combine estate tax, excise tax, corporate income tax, payroll tax, and individual income tax, the top 1%, not the top 20%, the top 20% pay 24.9%. The top 1% pay 31.9% of all the money the federal government collects via the tax code. That's an enormous amount of money. So when Bernie Sanders says, well, the rich need to pay their fair share, rest assured, my good friends, they're paying their fair share. They're paying more than their fair share. So the top quintile, 25%, the top 1%, 31.9%. So there's about 25, so it's about 60%. They're about, not quite 60%, but pretty close to 60% of all tax collected is collected by the top 20% wage earners. And once again, that's not just the individual income tax. That's when you combine the excise, the estate, the corporate income, and the payroll tax. That's a lot of money. Let's do this. How do we address the deficit? What is there we can do to get the deficit under control? I've got a couple of places I think we need to look. I mean, obviously, Medicare is the biggest driver. It's the biggest growing. Social Security is manageable. If we do some pretty serious things, Social Security is something we can deal with. Medicare is an animal in its own. Medicare and Medicaid. Let's take those two healthcare components. I mean, the government has basically socialized a certain segment of our healthcare industry. And let's look at what's happened as a result of Medicare and Medicaid. Italy spends about $3,500 per person per year on healthcare spending. The United Kingdom, Great Britain, about $4,200. Australia, $4,500. Japan, $4,700. Canada, $4,800. France, $4,900. You got to get all the way to Sweden before some country spends over $5,000 a year in health care. Sweden's at $5,500 per person per year on health care cost. Germany is the only other country over $5,000. They're at $5,700. Guess what the United States spends per person per year on health care? $10,209. It's completely and totally inefficient, and it's out of whack when it comes to the rest of the world and how much money they spend on health care. So there's a place we've got to deal with. I mean, when we talk about budget deficits and debt, a lot of the debt is driven by Medicaid expansion and Medicare growth. I mean, Obamacare expanded the Medicaid rolls in an incredible way. I mean, the healthcare providers liked it because it created a lot more customers. A lot more people have health care now, whether they're paying for it or not. A lot aren't paying. The majority, about 82% of people who are new health care consumers in America aren't paying for it. They're on Medicaid. And I know the hospitals will argue, and the health care providers will argue reimbursement rates. I'm not going down that road. I don't understand that road enough. All I'm saying is this country's spending about twice what other countries are spending per year per consumer on health care. So when you look at the debt and you look at Medicare and Medicaid, you got to say, wow, man, I mean, why in the world are we spending, $10,205? Well, I mean, we got the best health care system in America. I mean, the world. There's a lot of questions there. That there's a lot of uncertainty as to whether we have the best health care system. I mean, look at outcomes. It's obvious we don't have the best value proposition in the world. I mean, nobody could argue that. I mean, American health care is incredibly expensive. You and I talk a lot about it. The majority, I think 1/3 of all families in America today, the largest line item in their family budget is health care. More than the house payment. More than, obviously, the car payment. So to suggest that we are in line with we're American exceptionalists. We don't have to be in line with the rest of the world. Why do you think people come here when they want health care treatment? Well, they do come here for certain features of our health care system, but our health care system is not at all a value proposition, period. End of discussion. We can argue about who the best heart doctor is. Where should you go get cancer treatment? The debate about, how much money health care premium should be and how much the deductible should be. But there's no question that when you look at America as opposed or in contrast to all the developed countries in the world, we are enormously out of proportion. The American healthcare consumer spends a lot more money on healthcare, whether they pay for it or somebody else does, than the rest of the world. That's undeniable. I mean, nobody can argue that. So I think Medicare and Medicaid, the healthcare industry in America, the healthcare sector of our economy has to be dealt with. I mean, we're spending about 18% of GDP. That's unbelievable. That is so out of whack from the rest of the world, it's unimaginable. And I've got a lot of opinions, some fairly aggressive, in relation to the providing side, the insurance side. I think it's, we call college We call higher education a scam. Excuse me, not a scam. We call it a racket. I think there's a lot of racketeering going on in healthcare as well.